Hello and welcome to the Analyst by Vajiram and Ravi, your daily partner in mastering current affairs for UPSC examination. It's April 30th, 2025 today, and we have lined up with some crucial topics in this discussion. In today's in-depth analysis, we'll be firstly looking at a closer look at the Pegasus issue, weighing the various delicate balance between our privacy and our national security concern. And then we discuss the need for a judicial remedy in our waste management issues, exploring environmental justice and civic accountability. And finally, in our simplified section, we will be dealing with various topics that are crucial for the upcoming prelims 2025 examination, from technology to defense to agriculture and investment trends. So stay tuned. Hello guys, I hope you all are doing well. Welcome to another episode of The Analyst, where we will be trying to understand the most important articles from the Hindu and the Indian Express today. And we know that we have various issues today. Firstly, I will be taking up the main topic of the recent Supreme Court observations on the issue of Pegasus. Now, Pegasus is a kind of a spyware. Now, spywares are specialized computer programs that are designed to run on your smartphones, on your laptops, on all of the major electronic devices that operates on the various operating systems, and this particular software can extract your personal information and can deliver it mainly to the people who would seek it for various malicious intentions, or maybe in some cases national security concerns. So this is the main issue. Here the Supreme Court is actually undertaking the main observation that Supreme Court has told that it is nothing wrong to have various aspects of spyware in a country which is laden with various security issues and also the recent security issue which is going on. So here in this discussion, we'll be trying to understand what all about is actually the aspect of Pegasus, what are the various privacy concerns, also the constitutional dimensions, and also what we must be doing forward with this. So let us start with this. Firstly, we have to understand that it is extremely important for prelims from the perspective of general science as to how spywares operate and some of the important key terms. Next, it is also very important for GS3 for us to understand about the various basics of cyber security and also the challenges that we as citizens face in our day-to-day lives. So here on, I will be straight away starting with the extremely basic aspect of what do you mean by a Pegasus spyware. Always keep in mind that any kind of spyware can extract information based on your various appliances, electronic devices, and so on. Now here, Pegasus is taking this spy or say activity of spying on a different level. It is actually an Israeli military grade software. Generally the Israeli military, mainly it's Mossad, which is actually a very well known and also sometimes not so say ethical intelligence operation or say organization in Israel. So Israel, for its own spying purposes, have actually developed this kind of software, and it is actually pioneered by a private company based in Israel by the name of the NSO Group. It was established in 2010 with the main intention to monitor and steal information from a user's device without their knowledge or consent. Obviously, if you are spying on somebody, you would not let them know or take their consent in taking information from their lives. And that is exactly how this software is operating. The main operation of Pegasus is that they can actually look at your SMS, WhatsApp messages, even messages from your iOS devices, that is Apple devices, and also various other say vulnerabilities that can be present within an operating system. We know that every device right now in our recent times have some operating softwares, for example Windows, Android, iOS, and various other applications, even Linux. So sometimes in designing these softwares, the developers can leave a gap or what we generally know as a bug. So what is the main aspect here? That such spywares exploit such vulnerabilities in your operating system. So it can actually harvest your SMS details, your email, photos, videos, contacts, call records, WhatsApp chat, which was actually envisaged to be very safe because it was actually too much encrypted. But again, this particular spyware can look at all your details, even your calendar, GPS data, Even it can activate your camera and microphone. That is actually a very dangerous thing. And mainly how we can actually get a Pegasus software in our smartphones, it is so easy. For example, say if the NSO group or if any other customers of the NSO group would want to extract your information, they would simply send you an unsuspecting message. If you even click or do not even click that, Pegasus is in your smartphone. It is as easy as that. And it is very, very undetectable. You cannot detect it using various conventional tools, and obviously various technical features make it extremely popular among the various governments or various terrorist groups or various other groups which use this software very actively. So first feature is zero-day exploit. So in zero-day exploit, what happens is that this software will be exploiting your operating system and the various vulnerabilities, right? Even if you click on that, even if you do not click on that, the spyware is in your smartphone. So it is as easy as that. Also, it can be done via routing or jailbreaking. That is, in this kind of terms, it means that it can give administrative control over your devices. So this is all about the various content that they can access if this has some administrative control. And finally, it also uses various toolkits or various programming codes, for example Hummingbird, and also with various modules such as Heaven, Eden, Erased for WhatsApp exploitation too. So we do not need to go into too much of details in this particular technical things. We only have to remember the names of the various terms here for the prelims examination. Now coming to the main context here, we find that almost 1 to 2 years ago there were flooding of news based on the misuse of Pegasus. If you can look at all the major headlines here, everyone is talking about Pegasus and how Pegasus has entered our daily lives. And mainly when we talk about the Pegasus, it is not ordinary citizens that the governments or various other aspects are concerned with. It is mainly with the spying of various important officials, journalists, human rights activists, or former election commissioners, scientists, and even the judges of our country. So it was alleged in 2021 as a part of the Pegasus project, which was a global project in which various investigative journalists all across the world, they collaborated. They tried to investigate as to finding the Pegasus software in various smartphones or in various devices across the country. So they found out that Pegasus was present at that time at more than 300 plus phone numbers, including even union ministers and various people here. You can actually look at the headline in the Hindu back then. So it was a very big controversy back then. And also it was seen earlier also in 2019 that in the Bhim Koregaon controversy, in the case of that, it was alleged that Pegasus was used to spy on the various lawyers and even the activists. Also, in a separate case in the US, the US court found the NSO accused of infecting more than 1,400 WhatsApp users, including 300 from India. And this was actually a very significant aspect because among these 1,400 people, the Arab royal family members were included, 64 major business executives were included, and various other prominent government officials, journalists all across the world were included. And it became a very serious concern, because if the spyware can look at the WhatsApp messages, chats, audio, video, camera, microphone of this particular important peoples, they can have crucial information. And if it is as easy as it seems like, then it is a very big threat to people's privacy and also sometimes in the case of national security. So that is why this particular issue has been going in the Supreme Court for almost 2 to 3 years or even 4 years from now. And that is where the various key arguments in the court came to the fore recently. The Supreme Court actually recognized the fact that, okay, we need to have various safety features for protecting the privacy details of various peoples in the country. But we have to also keep in the broader national security architecture in mind. And in this aspect, we have to take into consideration both the government and the opposition's concerns in our aspect here. Firstly, the government via the Solicitor General Tushar Mehta tells that terrorists or various anti-nationals need to be spied upon, and that is where we have to validate the use of such spywares. Secondly, the government is also recognizing the need that national security justifies surveillance. It is not only via Pegasus that we can have some scope of surveillance, but in India we have various laws and regulations I will be showing in the next slide, which actually mandates legal surveillance. Next, also, the Supreme Court and also the government of India tried to prepare a report as to how these allegations came to the day. And also the government, when it was asked that you can release this record or say report in the public, the government told that it cannot release the report in public because it can actually give the various sensitive information to the public and it can be misused and it can go against our national security imperatives. Now, the petitioners have their own concerns through various senior advocates. It came to the fore that the technical committee of 2022, which was actually a committee set up by the Supreme Court to look into these various allegations, they actually are arguing that this report must be made public. So we can actually look into who were the various peoples, because it was alleged that mainly the people from the opposition parties, the former chief election commissioners, even the judiciary and the judges were under this Pegasus scandal. So they are, having this kind of accountability from the government to be upheld in this matter. And finally, they are also citing the US court ruling that recognized that, okay, NSO did actually, infect various peoples. And in this regard, the various senior advocates, they are arguing for transparency just like the US. And finally, they are also arguing for the broader right to privacy that is guaranteed by the Constitution of our country under Article 21. And also this was reflected by the case Puttaswamy case in 2018. So they are highlighting on these matters. Now, we need to firstly look at some of the frameworks that are legal in the country. Firstly, we have the Telecom Act of 2023, which mandates the takeover of telecom networks during various emergencies. And this is actually signaling that we can actually conduct surveillance. Next, we also have Indian Telegraph Act, a very important one. And also the various rules, under this particular act, which requires government authorization for call interception. Next, we also have the IT Act of 2000, which allows interception, monitoring, decryption of various computer data if it is concerning various national interest or national security concerns. Next, we also have the Digital Personal Data Protection Act of 2023. But as of now, we do not have proper rules and regulations as to what are the various norms and standards are according to this law. So based on this, we need to have proper amount of, rules and regulations based on what is actually defining the personal data protection statutes and the various consent, accountability, breaches, and so on. So that is also something which we are having as a part of this act. But still, as of now, this act is not fully implemented in letter and spirit. Next, when we talk about the international legal landscape, we have a particular Budapest Convention on Cybercrime, to which India is not a signatory. We also have the UN group of governmental experts, which is looking into the various cyber behaviors of the various countries and the governments all across the world, and hence is also looking on the matters of surveillance. And also, if I compare with the US is having a US Computer Fraud and Abuse Act of 1986, where the US has actually used this act to sue the NSO group for WhatsApp hack. So based on this, we have to now look at various concerns. Now, when we talk about the concerns regarding this Pegasus, firstly, the main thing that comes to our mind is the right to privacy. Our right to privacy is generally curtailed if someone is spying on our details. And this is going against the spirit and the letter of the K.S. Puttaswamy judgment of 2017-18. And this is actually bringing again the debate as to where is the balance between surveillance and Article 21. Next, we also compromise the freedom of speech expression, which is actually a part of our Article 19, 1A. And that is where we can also try to understand that if at all such surveillance is made legal in the country, or if such surveillance is done by the government, allegedly, there is always a constant threat of being watched. If you also can imagine that if someone is constantly watching you, you cannot freely express yourself, you cannot freely express your fundamental right, which is also including the right to express your dissent. If you're not satisfied, you have that right to express. But the opposition members, the Supreme Court judges, and the various other people who were allegedly a part of this Pegasus scandal, right? Now, what you have to think about them. Where is their freedom of speech and expression? Because allegedly, according to various critics, the government used the Pegasus to look into their personal details. Next, we also have a lack of oversight because such surveillance matters do not come to the parliament, do not come to the legislatures. It is generally the executive who is calling all the shots here. Next, we also do not have a legal discourse, because if we do not have oversight, if we do not have any evidence of some surveillance, how can we go to the courts? How can we actually take a legal action? Now, we also have to understand that if victims are being surveilled, they do not even know that they are being surveilled. So that is where we have to understand that their constitutional rights under Article 32 and Article 226 of them to approach the Supreme Court and the High Court respectively, that can be curtailed. Next, the executive is also having an overreach, because even Supreme Court judges, journalists, and various other people allegedly were targeted. And finally, the society can actually become very afraid, very concerned with such acts, and this can actually chill or restrict your free thought and various amounts of, say, courageous journalism, and also at the end of the day, ethos and foundation of our democracy. So that is where we have to take some stance here. The Supreme Court has actually referred this matter for hearing at a later date. It will generally come with various amounts of, say, improvements in this particular matter. But we have to take some action points. Firstly, we can actually create an independent court approval for surveillance requests, and we can actually do this at an fast track basis. For all cases related to surveillance, we can have a dedicated court. Also, at a later date, we have to disclose the tools that we used, and also what are the purposes of those tools. Maybe after 1 week, maybe after 1 month, maybe after 10 years, it doesn't matter. We have to have some law or regulation which mandate that you have to disclose the information later on. Next, we have to fully operationalize the Digital Personal Data Protection Act, because as we have seen, we have so many safeguards in this particular act, but we are not yet operationalizing this act. Next, we also have to understand and appreciate the fact as a government that we must be doing surveillance only when it is the most necessary thing, and not when it is just a usual affair. And finally, we, or say the government of India must be supporting the privacy matters when it concerns various important applications such as WhatsApp and so on, because they run on latest technologies on end-to-end encryption of your data. And that is why we must be also trying to, or the government of India must be trying to uphold this kind of privacy standard. At the end of the day, the citizens themselves must also be aware of the various digital security issues that they're facing online. They have to secure their phones. They can also use VPN, right? That can help them make various decisions online without being afraid of getting traced and also being harassed later. And also you have to always think before you take any clicks, not only on your laptops, but also on your smartphones and so on. And this is how this entire issue should be discussed in your answers, using various technical terms, judgments, initiatives that we have discussed. Now we have come to the PYQs from 2017 and 2020 using our common sense. Let us solve this in the comments below. Also, as usual, we have a mains practice question for all of you. You can practice this at your own ease. Guys, in the next one, we are going to look at a very interesting thing, or a very interesting solution our author has proposed on the issue of waste management in the country. First, I am going to discuss about the various basics of waste management, the data and the various aspects. Then we are going to look into the aspect of our, continuing mandamus and what are the various steps we can take in India for that. Now, we have to understand that this article is extremely important for our general issues on environment, ecology and various aspects of climate change. Also, for our GS3, this topic becomes extremely important for the topics of conservation, environmental pollution and degradation, where within environmental pollution and degradation, we have the various topics of solid waste, management. So that is where we have to focus on, mainly by looking at what is the scale of India's waste problem. When we are talking about the solid wastes in the country, we are talking about the various wastes that emanate from the mining sector, that is from the various waste rock, mine water, chemicals and so on. Also, we have to look at forestry and agriculture, where we have the aspects of pesticides, fertilizer, organic, and the plastics, containers, manures, slaughter waste and others. Similarly, we have some very solid wastes from our industrial sector, from a household sector, the commercial sector and the government bodies, mainly the electronic waste, the medicinal waste, the municipal solid wastes. Mainly these are extremely pressing issues in our modern urban India. Then we have the various wastes from construction and demolition activities, and finally from wastewater treatment. So students, when we are writing some answer on waste management, we also have to tell the examiner exactly what wastes we are talking about in solid waste management. Now, when we talk about the data according to various government sources, we have 12% of the global municipal waste in India. Also, India generates 62 million tons of solid wastes, and this is only per year. Out of this, only 70% is collected, 20% is treated, and the rest is dumped. And these various dumps are generally on landfills or generally on the various roads and the various municipal garbage disposals. Next, we also have 9.3 million tons of plastic wastes annually. And this is increasingly also seeping into our seas and oceans and trapping our marine organisms within their garb. Also, it is expected to rise to 165 million tons by 2030. So that is why solid wastes pose a serious challenge. When we look at the composition of the solid wastes right now, this data is extremely important. We see that generally food waste, gardening, trimming, biodegradable waste contribute 50% according to 2021-2022. Next, we have the various construction waste. After that, we have glass, metal, plastic, clothes and paper wastage. So these are the various wastages we have to deal with, because if we do not, it will be going into our soils, it will be actually causing an environmental concern later on. Even methane, which is much more global warming potentially active than carbon dioxide, is released in huge amounts from these municipal waste grounds. And that is where we have to firstly appreciate why our current systems are failing. Firstly, from a management crisis, because in our country, when it comes to solid wastes, we are grossly mismanaging them. Firstly, when we talk about the various dump sites or the various places where we are actually dumping these various wastes, now these dump sites are outlining the landfills to the ratio of 10:1. That means that if we are having a landfill, we are digging up the ground, we are placing all the solid wastes within that hole, and then we are covering with the soil. This ensures effective biodegradation of the wastes easily. But we are not having landfills of this huge amount, mainly because we have various land acquisition issues. And also it takes some time for the landfills to be built, and it takes zero amount of time to take the waste and simply dump it at some point. So that is why we have to understand at the dump sites, and even in Delhi, you can actually mention a particular place in Delhi in the comments to showcase that this kind of wastes are openly burnt or actually left dumped for years and years to go. And this is causing several issues, from environmental issue, even health issues with reference to the various rag pickers who actually extract a lot of living from this kind of activities. Next, when we talk about the solid waste management, we always have an urban perspective here, where the rural India, the 70% of India is ignored altogether, right? The rural and the semi-rural areas in the country are not having proper amount of waste disposal mechanisms. It is having an urban focus. So directly and indirectly, we are excluding 70% of the population from this woe. Next, the government claims that in India, we are only consuming around 120 grams or 0.12 kilograms per person per day of plastic waste. But global studies indicate otherwise, that we are almost consuming half a kilo of plastic per person per day. every single day. And that is where we have to keep in mind that plastic wastes are also causing concern, despite the ban of single-use plastics or the various issues or the various new funds, new technologies involved here. We are still using the single-use plastics on a daily basis, and that is only increasing over a period of time. So such data, such arguments are extremely important for your answers. Next, when we look at the various other issues, firstly, where we have to consider the issue of data. When we talk about the data, firstly, we have to understand that based on the various state pollution control boards who are actually, entrusted with the task of monitoring, evaluating, and looking into the various issues of solid waste management in the urban areas, they are not having proper data as to how many landfills we have, as to what are the various types of wastes we have. So audits or methodology for waste tracking is not prominently there. Also, the Central Pollution Control Board is actually relying on the local municipal data which is themselves very much faulted, because these municipal reports on a local level are unverified. These are not done by professional people, and that is leading to various policies which the central government is designing based on underestimation of numbers, based on wrong data. Finally, these policies will not be implemented well. Next, at a very local level, and mainly we are talking about the rural India, the panchayats do not have waste tracking, no infrastructure of collecting the wastes in the country, and this is leading to open burning of the wastes and groundwater contamination. And finally, when we talk about the extended producer responsibility, whenever I am buying some smartphones, right, I am ensuring that this smartphone I am using will be working for 1-2 years. What after that? So it can land into various e-wastes landfill in our country, right? But the companies, they must be designing the phones in such a manner such as either they can have a provision of taking back the phone from the consumers when the phone is no longer in use, or the phone has become faulty, or it has become obsolete. So mainly, firstly, maybe the company should be having some structure to take back the smartphones and maybe recycling it at their own end. Or the companies can also ensure that these phones are built in such a way that they can easily be recycled. So these are the various extended producer responsibilities that the main issue is that the brands in India do not recycle too much, and also mainly the informal sector is handling 90% of the wastes due to this extended producer responsibilities not being implemented properly on the ground, which is leading to a lot of e-wastes in the country, and also the various aspects of other kind of wastes too. So this is leading to the rivers getting choked with plastics, and the landfills, and also the Himalayas, where we see a lot of waste at top. So this is where this judicial remedy is coming to the picture right now. Now this is a 5-step waste management overhaul, and the term for this, you should be remembering this for your examination, is known as continuing mandamus. Now from your polity we know that in our judiciary, the courts have the various writs, and one of them is mandamus, which means that it is actually issued by a court to command a public authority to perform its legal duty properly. Based on the concept of mandamus, we get something which we know as continuing mandamus. We have just seen how the solid waste management is an issue that is concerning mismanagement and various other data collection issues. So mainly, if we can consider this is a failure of the public responsibilities. And that is where we have to strengthen those responsibilities by ensuring the courts use this kind of provision. Firstly, the very first step that we have to understand here is by fixing the various data gaps. Through this, we have to take the use of artificial intelligence satellites to measure the waste in the country, right? And here we should be also including the informal sector. Now the second step is to universalize the extended producer responsibilities, that the responsibilities of the producers do not extinguish whenever that producer is selling something to the consumers. Even after selling the good to the consumers, the producers have the responsibility of taking care that their products do not end up on landfills. And this is exactly the thing that I have discussed using the example of smartphones, that if we are using some smartphones, at the end life or the end cycle of that smartphone, that particular company of that smartphone must be trying to take it back and also ensure that they are recycled. So this must be extended to some models of brand-owned kiosks where producers, importers, brand owners must be setting up waste collection kiosks in every panchayat or ward. This will be ensuring local collection of these various wastes, and this can generally lead to the reduction of it over a period of time. And if you are not doing the same, you will be having a penalty, and this can be on the principle of polluter pays. That means if you are polluting, you have to pay for it, as simple as that. The next step is the step 3, which is rural waste infrastructure building, and this is where we have to have various material recovery facilities in villages, and this will be segregating the various recyclable wastes and the non-recyclable wastes. The recyclable wastes can be then sent to various companies or startups which can actually process this and make new items. So this can be actually potentially revenue stream for the future, or say the future supply chain. And also, any open burning, such as stubble burning and so on, they must be criminalized. For this, the Supreme Court can actually lay down the various provisions for the same, or even the legal authorities, or even at the end of the parliament and the legislatures can also deal with the same. This is exactly following the same steps which are highlighted by the Supreme Court judgment that was given with reference to the operation or the pollution of tanneries in Vellore district. So this is where we have to now come to the 4th step, the judicial monitoring, that even after step 1, 2, 3, if these things are not properly implemented, there must be a Supreme Court appointed committee or various committees to audit how the initiative is going forward. Just like we have various committees to manage or to look into Swachh Bharat's failed targets. Next, we can also have, or the Supreme Court on its part can also attract various public interest litigations, and these litigations can actually focus mainly on the municipalities and their failures or inaction for the various solid waste management. And finally, the 5th step is remediation funds, where the government must be trying to advance various costs to the various local bodies, and these costs that the government is paying to the local bodies, the government can later recover this cost from the polluters themselves. For example, the various private companies and so on, just as the thing as we have seen in the Vellore case. In Vellore, the various tanneries had actually to pay the amount to the government for the pollution that they have caused. And that is why we have to ensure that this particular continuing mandamus can be adopted in increasing amount by the course of the day, which will be holding up various legal principles that pertain to our environment. Firstly, we have the polluter pay principles, where it says that if you are polluting, you have to compensate the same. Also, it is our constitutional duty as a part of our DPSP under Article 48, as a part of our right to free air and healthy environment as a part of our Article 21, and also as a part of our fundamental duty to protect our environment. And that is where we also have to recognize the custodianship of rights, for example, fundamental rights, and here the authorities have to appreciate that the right to free air, clean air is all a part of the fundamental rights. And finally, it is also upholding the government pay principle. That is, the government or the state must compensate and later recover from the violator the various amounts. So earlier we had challenges of political apathy, and if we are trying to use this continuing mandamus, we can solve this because this can reduce the various delays. Next, the other problem was corporate resistance, because many companies were not enthusiastic enough to implement these norms. Now, if we are having mandatory APR compliance, this will be also enhancing the implementation along with penalties. And finally, the funding gaps also are some of the issues, and also here the polluter pay principle is actually ensuring that if someone is polluting, they are paying for it, and automatically the funds for environmental upkeep is coming from. And that is where we have to have some way forward here. Firstly, we can have some strict fines for non-segregation. In Singapore, that is amounting to $300. We can actually have this as a part of the polluter pay principle. Next, we need to have daily waste audit, and we can use technology by combining GPS systems here to monitor the various trucks and the various motor vehicles which are transporting the municipal wastes from one location to the other. Next, we should be also having decentralized waste processing in the country. In this matter, we can also follow Tamil Nadu and Bengaluru model, where Tamil Nadu is following the micro-composting norm, where they are trying to transform around 5 tons of municipal waste, and they are trying to transform this wet waste or kind of biodegradable waste per word into various economic opportunities. Next, Bangalore model is focusing on the dry waste centers. They are also transforming 2 tons per day into various recycling hubs. This biodegradable wet waste can be transformed into various other byproducts. This dry waste can be also transformed into various other byproducts where the startups and the companies can actually have some revenue amounts. Next, we should be also, as a government, trying to formalize the informal sector. And here I'm also talking about the various gears or the equipments that the rack pickers should be having whenever they're going to any landfill, because the fumes and the various aspects of methane pollution reduce the quality of their life. Also, we have a lot of child labor in this particular industry. We have to prevent that too by having proper data of the various workers in this sector. Finally, we have to try to upskill them because they cannot continue to work in such conditions. We have to skill them with other kind of aspirations to enable them become employed. And finally, we need some public awareness drives because people must be aware, people must be themselves segregating the wastes at their homes themselves. They must be trying to segregate wet waste and dry waste separately, so that it is easy for the government also at the end of the day to segregate them later. It is ultimately us we have to understand and appreciate that will be helping the government in a very positive way. And at the end of the day, the private sector cannot also ignore this role. Where in Indore, there are various private sector companies which do waste collection because they actually see gold in their wastes, because they try to process the waste, they try to manufacture various other goods and services from the waste that they have collected. And this is actually $1 million industry there. We must be trying to replicate it elsewhere. Also, when we talk about implementing the EPR guidelines, EPR rules and regulations, we can also have blockchain, because blockchain ensures that we are having a proper amount of architecture to ensure that no private company is escaping the EPR guidelines on a digital platform. And based on this, we can also learn from various other countries such as Sweden, where they have recycled up to the tune of 99% using strict laws and public participation. Japan have used zero waste towns. They have transformed various cities and towns into zero wastes, right? Also, the EU have proper amount of strict laws for EPRs, where the European brands, they recycle to the tune of 50%, also looking into plastic wastes. And finally, we have to also learn from Rwanda, because they have actually put a ban on the plastic bags, and they also have some monthly cleanup days. So this is why we have a lot to learn from various other countries. And again, a question for all of you. And always remember, for good answer writing, you need good presentation. Always use such diagrams or flow charts like this as a part of your answer, so all of you can practice and then you can let me know. And now I'm going to show you some PYQs from prelims 2019. You solve this and you let me know in the comments. Also look at the various mains questions from this particular topic. You can pause the screen and you just take an idea of the expected questions in the future. Now, starting the simplified articles, in the very first one, we have a study done by the Indian government based on the Deeptech startups in the country, which is extremely important for the prelims from an economic and social development perspective, also from a general science perspective. For GS3, we need to be aware of the various recent events in the fields of IT, space, computers and robotics, where deep technology comes to our attention. So when I talk about the deep technology startups, firstly, we have to understand what is deep tech in the very first place. Look at these examples: biotechnology, photonics, electronics, language processing, big data, quantum computing, AR, VR, that says augmented reality, virtual reality, robotics, blockchain, artificial intelligence and machine learning. What all these strike to you? These are actually emerging technologies, or the technologies of the future. So these technologies use complex programming, complex sophisticated technologies, and they are a different class of technology altogether. If I talk about the recent world and also the future world is being increasingly dominated by all these particular technologies. And for this, the startups in India and also across the entire world, they're actually focused on harnessing the potential of these technologies. So when I talk about deep tech startups, these are the companies which are built on disruptive, science-driven innovations. And these are generally high risk and high impact ventures. When I'm talking about ChatGPT, it is actually modeled by OpenAI. When I'm talking about DeepSeek, it is also designed by Chinese-based startup. And that is why we understand that in the entire world, the startups are emerging in all of these technologies here, and they're carving their own niche. They're very risky, but they're highly rewarding. And this is where a particular company, for example, take the case of ChatGPT by OpenAI. Right now, are they not the technological leaders in AI, or say one of the leaders in AI? So that is where we have to understand, if a startup from India aspires to have that level, they can also climb up the ladder in this particular manner. And that is why a recent study has been commissioned by the Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor, and this has been executed by the Confederation of Indian Industry and the Center for Technology Innovation and Economic Research. Prelims important information. Now, this study has looked at 62 parameters, including how much the startups are spending on the Deeptech R&D, what are the number of young scientists there, the patents filed, the technologies developed, and various other things. And after looking at this kind of sectors, and also the various sectors which are capable of utilizing the various national missions on Deep Ocean Mission, National Quantum Mission, India AI Mission, this particular study has come up with some of the data. Now it is important to note that some of the strategic sectors such as defense, space and atomic energy, they have not been studied for obvious reasons, for national security concerns. Now there are various things which were found in this particular study. Firstly, when we talk about startup support, only 25% offered any startup incubation, right? That means, in the country, when we talk about the deep tech startups, only 25% had any incubation, and only 16% supported the deep tech startups. Next, when we talk about the global industry ties, only 15% of the deep tech startups had global collaboration abroad, which is extremely important to have in our deep tech research. Next, when we talk about the facilities, only half of them open laboratories to outside researchers or students because they simply do not have much of the funds. Next, when we talk about the R&D spend, 25% of the startups, they spend 75 to 100% of their entire budget on R&D. That means it is a cause of concern. What about the other kinds of, say, aspects? What about the salaries and the various other, expenditures? Apart from this, others, for example, ICAR and various government enterprises and various government authorities, when we talk about pioneering deep tech from their end, from the government's end themselves, government have done this research in much large amount. And that is why we have to understand that the funding is a very major concern. Also, at the end of the day, when we talk about the youth participation in research, their share has increased to 58%, but actually it is down from 2017 to 2020 era. So in the present era, there is a less amount of youth in this deep technology research. That is also a cause of concern. Now, after we have looked at the various issues, now we have to come to the various government policies in India which support deep technological research in the country. Firstly, we know that we have Startup India and Atmanirbhar Bharat initiatives to look into how startups can be having more funds over a period of time. But this is a very generic scheme which is funding all kinds of startups. Next, we have a draft mission, right? A draft policy that is known as the National Deep Tech Startup Policy, which will be a very important policy focused only on the deep technological startups. Next, we also have the National Research Foundation, which is actually a kind of a body which will be funding the various research in the country. Again, this is a umbrella kind of a scheme which is funding the research into all of the research fields. Next, we have a kind of a specific mission right now. We have National Quantum Mission, we have Semiconductor Mission, we have India AI Mission, which is looking into these emerging technologies specifically. So, from the government perspective, we need more amount of such missions focusing on various aspects of robotics, biotech and so on, right? And finally, we also have the PLI schemes. these schemes have components in electronic manufacturing, semiconductors, and so on. This is also having that component to look into the various aspects of more deep technology in the country. But here we can actually think of various countries right now. For example, US, it has various government funds such as grants, defense technology, and so on. In India, we do not have that particular thing from DRDO or ISRO. Israel is having its unit 8200, right, and which is actually a kind of say military research and development, and the money from it will be going to the startups. In India, we do not have such a kind of ecosystem. In Germany also, we have various Fraunhofer institutes, which is actually a model following the public-private partnership. In India, we do not have those kind of aspects even by the CSIR. And that is where we have to find some solutions right now. In India, if I can look at this data, we have most number of startups from artificial intelligence, big data, Internet of Things, blockchain, and so on. So specifically, government must be first identifying them. Next, if I talk about the various venture capitalists who like to invest their money in various startups, very rich people they are. Now they invest their monies in various startups in the country, as you can see here. So according to the various data, there are various venture capital funds which invest in the country. But we need to look into various other startups too, for which we need to set up various strategic laboratories. For example, in this matter, the DRDO, ISRO, BARC can actually have spin-off startups just on the model of Israel. Also, they can try to declassify various non-sensitive data, for example, data pertaining to drones, artificial intelligence, and so on. Next, we also must be increasing the funding for applied research. We have to double our non-defense R&D budget. It is a meager amount of 0.6% of our GDP, for which we have to create a 10,000 crore fund for exclusively deep technology for startups. We can also mandate industrial collaboration, where we can actually force the various government entities, such as CSIR, ICMR, to partner with various startups. Even with various MNCs, we can give them various tax breaks or say tax concessions so that they can invest some money in this particular sector. Next, we need to fix our own human capital. That is, we must be hiring more permanent scientists, because in this report, they have said that we have more short-term or contractual labor. So we must be having more startups, more permanent employees. We must be having more startup visas for various foreign deep tech talent in the country. And also we must be aligning our goals, our missions, our government schemes, which are sometimes very generic, very umbrella-like in nature, to more pioneer and specific ones. For example, if I, as India, would want to become a developed country by 2047, I would require manufacturing in semiconductors. I would require quantum computing. I would require India to have AI and robotics central. I would require India to be the global hub of clean technology. So let these be my aspirations for India at 2047. Now guys, in this article, we are going to look into the recent report by the US on India's patent ecosystem. Very important for our prelims and more important for GS3 means, where we have the issues pertaining to intellectual property rights. So this is one issue, because according to the USTR patent report, right, India is figuring on the priority watch list. Now when I talk about this report is talking about 1, 2, 3, 4 things. Firstly, bilateral trade, right? US will be looking with all its trade partners, right, as to how US to promote its own intellectual property exports to other countries. They can pressurize trade partners into reforming their IPR systems. Now imagine this one thing, that if US is right now the major technological power, obviously they must be having a strong IP ecosystem or patent ecosystem, right? And in this ecosystem, the manufacturers, the private sectors would be ensured or will be at peace if the US and the various other countries in the world, they also have the same ecosystem, right? And that is where we have to understand that US encourages that all of the countries must be having uniform intellectual property rights, so to have lesser disputes and more exports from the US. Next, they also take into factor the trade negotiations, right? And they can actually justify the tariffs, sanctions, or dispute settlement if at all some country is not following right? This kind of intellectual property rights and the laws and the regulations. Also, they can use based on the diplomatic sensitivity. That is, for example, if India is in the priority watch list, now it can jeopardize India's investor reputation, trade relationships with the US. It means that India is maybe not having proper amount of IPR rules and regulations. And also, at the end of the day, if you are on the list of the USTR, right, if you are on the priority list or the watch list, it means that your credibility from an US perspective is not strong enough. And this is the main thing here when we talk about the USTR and the implications on our country. Now, with reference to India, this report talked about some specific things. About firstly the patent protection norms, that in India we face a long amount of delay in patent approval. Also in India, we do not have the provision of evergreening. Evergreening generally means that if, for example, there is a drug manufactured by the US. Now, this, for example, this drug will be, the patent for this drugs will be valid for 10 years, after which it cannot be renewed. If at all that company is not making some new changes in the drug and making it look apparent that this is a new drug altogether. So what the US companies did over a long period of time, very clever chaps they are, they modified some chemicals here and there. Essentially the drug remained the same. That is the same drug. But they have tried to change some chemical composition and they again extended the patent for another 10 years. Like this, they will be changing something else and again another 10 year of patent. So in this way, US companies in pharmacy, in various other aspects, they try to evergreen the patents over a long period of time. Now in India, in Indian Patent Acts, according to section 3D, we do not have this evergreening aspect because it is simply unfair. Because simply for 10 years and going on forwards, you are just increasing the prices from US perspective. And at the end of the day, Indian consumers are suffering. So this is how we have to understand that this evergreening provision is not there. But at the end of the day, this is something which the USTR or the US will not recognize in a healthy spirit, especially under recent administration. And here we also have the various pharmaceutical test data which do not follow their own norms and regulations. And this will be discouraging innovation, and the US pharmaceutical companies will be facing various revenue losses. Next, when we talk about trademark enforcement, we have rampant counterfeiting of various US brands. We have a Nike and Adidas and the various other brands which have counterfeit goods in your own markets. You can let me know some of the funny names in the comments, right? Also, we have delays in this trademark opposition cases in the judiciary, which again hits badly the US brand integrity. And we also have the copyrights and piracy issues where the various creative artists such as musicians and the various film producers, they also face the issue of online piracy, where just hours after release of a movie in India, you can easily find it online or on Telegram channels, right? Based on this, India has also various illegal streaming platforms which deal a lot of blow to the various US-based media tech firms. Next, also when we talk about customs and trade barriers, we have high tariffs on IP-intensive goods because simply we have also to protect our own industry. But US thinks that it will be increasing the cost for US exporters and their own trade imbalances, where they are right. But on an Indian's perspective, we also have to improve the same. Next, the other issues is actually main with, in our own true spirit also. We have to recognize and acknowledge this fact that enforcement is a kind of a weakness in India. Now, this is a very genuine thing. This is a very genuine concern that in India, we have poor coordination based on the various agencies. We do not have specialized judges, specialized courts, mainly in the field of patent, while this is upcoming in the future as of now. But as of now, when we talk about the same, this is very abysmal. And at the end of the day, this, when we talk about any patent infringement cases, some of the criminal cases also, now they have very low conviction rates for theft or dispute resolution. And at the end of the day, we have also data exclusivity because we have inadequate protection for clinical trial data and various other data, mainly in these pharmaceutical industries. Again, these are various risks for US investors. So this is how we have to consider this USTR reports in our own interest too sometimes. Now, when we talk about the various other details this given in this article, mainly in India, the patents to the foreigners have stood to be higher than patents which have been given to our domestic citizens. And this is also something which is reflected by World Intellectual Property data. While this is actually not the same case with China. In China, domestic people have more patents than the foreign organizations. And here, this is a cause of concern, because if the MNCs and all of them have huge amounts, they can easily file patents. Patents generally take to the tune of 1 to 2 lakh just for filing and registration, and it can also increase the cost over a period of time, right? So MNCs have the power and the purchasing power for that. But when we talk about our India, right, the R&D in 2008 as a percentage of the GDP was 0.83%. Right now, it is only 0.65%, right, as of 2022. And this is according to the World Bank data, and also this is much lower than the global average of 2.62%. Countries such as South Korea, US, China, they are much ahead in India in this matter. And one more thing that this article is focusing on is on the trade secret protection. Imagine Pepsi, KFC, right, all of these have very secret ingredients, right? So these are actually protected by trade secrets. But in India, right, in India, we do not have no civil or criminal laws specifically for trade secrets. And this is also risking the various companies to disclose their source code for telecom equipment, for example, in the country. And this is where we can actually learn a few things from the US trade report, and this is pertaining to the patents. Also, we have to fix some things in our own ecosystem too. Now we'll be moving on to the next one. Guys, you all know that India and Pakistan are on a cusp of a major dispute according to various critics in the media. And in recent times, India has also signed 26 new Rafale M model. And that is why making it extremely crucial for our general science and in GS3 defense. Mainly, this article is talking about the importance of naval aviation, or the importance of India to have various aircraft carriers such as this one. Aircraft carriers are nothing but huge warships, where at the very top of them, we have landing strips for various aircrafts, where it is just like an extended airport or extended Air Force base, just that in this matter, it is operated by the naval forces. So it is not always true that Air Force only have the authority or the capability of having say fighter jets and so on. Even the Navy is having that same. So that is why naval aviation becomes extremely important right now in our recent times. It is actually aircraft operating from warships such as carriers, destroyers, to support various naval missions. And here, the main role is that these aircraft carriers, they actually support various air defense, and it is having various amounts of fleets of aircrafts from various, starting from various aircrafts to missiles and so on, where we have to protect our warships. Next, also, if I have an aircraft carrier and I belong to this neighborhood of China and Pakistan, I am actually projecting my power to my neighboring countries. And such is the thing that here aircraft carriers in India have actually emanated from 1960s onwards, where the INS Vikrant, INS Virat, INS Vikramaditya and the indigenous INS Vikrant in 2022 were the 4 aircraft carriers we had so far. As of now, we have only INS Vikramaditya, which is of Russian origin, and INS Vikrant, which is totally indigenous. In future, we are planning to have INS Vishal, which will be nuclear powered, and this is something of the future. But as of now, we are only having 2, and this is showing a lot of power to our neighborhood countries. Also, this is having the role and say the capability of having anti-surface warfare, where we can actually use our warships to have air launch missiles. Next, we can also do submarine hunting if we are having proper aircraft carrier, and also search and rescue operations. Now, when I'm talking about the recent deal of the Rafale M, this is a beast of a fighter jet. When we compare with the MiG-29K, it is better in almost all of the aspects, starting from weapons, payload, range, and so on, because it is having the capability of using air-to-air missiles, air-to-surface missiles, precision-guided munitions. Also, it has various electronic warfare capabilities such as spectra, front sector optronics, and also active electronically scanned array radar which can detect up to 200 kilometers. Also, it is totally compatible with aircraft carriers. It can easily land, easily take off on the same. That is why it is having a very good capability when we talk about its compatibility with India. Right now, we have to understand the overall significance of aircraft carriers and why India needs this at the very first place. Firstly, obviously, we have Pakistan and China, our two very friendly neighbors. And that is why we need to show the balance of power in the region. Secondly, we need to have protection of our maritime interests. We have, maritime piracy issues and various other aspects. Also, majority of the India's trade is also taking place via the sea. That is why we need to have proper amount of protection. We need to have blue water naval capability, and this is why we have to allow the Navy to use this kind of aircrafts over a long period of time. Also, we need to have continuous operational readiness, and finally, this can also sometimes fulfill non-military roles such as providing humanitarian relief, disaster management aspects, mainly to the various Indian Ocean region countries. Right now, also we have to understand how this Rafale M is boosting the India's naval power. Firstly, it will be replacing the aging MiGs, right? And they also have various other issues of crashing and so on. Next, we will be also in one move outclassing Japan's J-15, that is carrier based jet. China has their own carrier, and the Rafale M is actually a better one in this matter. Also, we have interoperability with the Indian Air Force, and also we need to prepare for the 5th generational fighters, because as of now the Rafale M and the various other model are 4.5 generation or older. But in India, we are also trying to have the indigenous twin engine deck based fighter from India itself by 2035. So actually, these were the various important details in this article. Now in 2024 prelims, there were 5 questions from defense. So you let me know what is the answer to this. You can take the hint from this picture, and now we'll be moving on to the next one. Recently, the Maharashtra government has scrapped its very popular crop insurance scheme that's actually had the cost of only 1 rupees. But right now, due to various issues, the Maharashtrian government actually, called back that particular scheme and will be implementing the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana in its place, which was earlier in place also. Now here, Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana was launched in 2016 by the Ministry of Agriculture. It is still under this particular implementation. It is giving crop insurance to various farmers against losses due to natural calamities such as floods, droughts and so on. Also protecting against pests and diseases, and covering the various post-harvest losses too, such as hailstorms, landslides and so on. Mainly the key objectives here is to give financial protection to the farmers, income stability, promote modern farming, and also ensuring that the farmers do not only rely on some specific crops, they can now take risks because they have insurance. So they can now grow fruits, vegetables, horticulture, because for that also we have crop insurance. We will be supporting crop diversification, and at the end of the day, farmers most often rely on informal sectors such as money lender, their friends, families, which sometimes can charge higher interest rates. So based on this, we can have better amount of credit access. If a farmer has crop insurance, they can easily take loans from the banks, because it is at the end of the day, the banks were giving the various amounts of insurance schemes in collaboration with the various insurance companies. Now, when we talk about the various eligibility here, firstly we have various categories. Firstly, farmers who have taken loans in the past for their farming related activities, for them this scheme is compulsory. Please do remember this. And here, the premium contribution, for example, say if we have 100 rupees as premium for this agriculture. So here only 2 rupees has to be paid by the farmers for the kharif crops, 1.5% for the rabi crops, 5% for horticulture crops. For non-loany farmers, this scheme is not compulsory. This is voluntary in nature. For SC, ST or women farmers, they will be getting extra government subsidies. And for Northeast Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal farmers, the government will be paying the entire premium from itself. And this is why, according to various irregularities, allegations and corruption in the Maharashtrian government scheme of this crop insurance, this is repealed right now. It was implemented in 2023, but the various issues and so on, so it's repealed over a period of time. And also, because we have to understand this Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana is actually a very successful scheme. In Maharashtra 2023, it faced a drought, and despite that, 12 lakh farmers received 2,500 crore rupees worth of claims. In Andhra Pradesh, during Cyclone Mishwang, 98% of the claims were settled within 45 days. The same thing can be seen in Punjab. So these are some model case studies you can actually use in your answers too. Now, the main benefits is that their premium is extremely affordable. Maybe it is not 1 rupees, but it is affordable. The rest of the money is actually given by the government. It is also covering various wide activities such as pre-harvest, post-harvest losses, but it is having some exceptions such as war, nuclear damage, intentional crop destruction. Next, it is also having fast and transparent claim aspects, where we have the National Crop Insurance Portal and mobile applications for crop damage tracking. And this is where you solve this 2016 question. Now we will be moving on to the last one. According to a recent study, private sector capital expenditure has risen 66% over the last 4 years, but according to the last financial year, it has decreased by 25%. So let us understand all of these details here. Firstly, this is the recent report by the NSO, National Statistics Office, under the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, which actually showed that on an year-on-year growth, 2024-25 capital expenditure by the private companies, right, they have increased by 55%, but in the next financial year it has decreased dramatically by 25%, right? And here over financial year 2022-2025, it has increased by 66%. And here, whenever I'm talking about capital expenditure by the companies, they generally mean that they are investing in long term in the physical assets such as factories, plants, infrastructure, machinery, and also regarding various technological upgrades or capacity expansion. Generally, countries or companies generally invest when they see greater economic potential over a period of time. And that is where we have to appreciate the reasons why in 2024-25 we had a boom in investment, but we had a dip going forward. Firstly, in 2024-25 financial year, inflation was quite manageable. The public expenditure or the government expenditure was healthy. Government was expending or spending money on infrastructure. That is why the private people also wanted to invest, right? Also, we had various PLI schemes. That is why the private companies thought of investing more money and get more benefits from this scheme. Also, the government had various tax and infrastructural reforms in this particular financial year. And finally, we have to now also appreciate the corporate deal leveraging that happened during this particular time. Now, when we compare the same with the recent financial year, we have various high borrowing costs right now. The interest rates are very high. Also, the global uncertainties such as wars, even the actions of the US Fed, they all impact right now. And right now, we also have the recent crisis. Next, we also have the weak domestic demand in the various markets, where we are seeing the phenomena of ghost malls, where the malls are not having enough customers. Next, we also have base effects from large 2025 investments. That is, if we are having investments up to the huge amount in the last year, in the present year, we are not having invested up to that amount. So compared to the last year, right, the investments are maybe high, but not like the last year. And that is why we have some elections coming up, and some of the companies are also waiting and watching for what will be the main outcome of such elections. Now, the top 5 sectors during 2025 financial year, 2024-25, were actually the renewable energy, semiconductors, and also the steel and cement sector, which actually fueled this infrastructural boom. Apart from this, we also have EVs as a part of automobiles and chemical and pharma. The sectors which are pulling back right now, which are causing less investments, are generally the real estate sector, which saw infrastructural boom earlier, but right now we are having slower real estate. Consumer durables are also low because of weak rural demand, and also textile sector is slowing down. And that is where we have to kind of appreciate the fact of slowing investments in the country. And this brings me to thank you all for being a very patient audience. And that is where please attempt the quiz which is following on. Until we meet again, all the best. Best of luck. Thank you.